Going. Hey everybody, it's Cheryl Lawson, and I've got David Clymer and Nelson Dooley with me on the live Hangout. Say hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi, guys.
And I've got David Clymer and Nelson Dooley with me on the live Hangout. Say hi, everybody. I'm hearing myself.
Hello, guys.
That's the first time.
Oh my gosh, why is that doing it again? On the live Hangout. Say hi, everybody. I'm hearing myself.
Are you viewing it?
No, I don't know where that's coming from, so we'll if I hang up on you. There we go. Holy moly. So I had the event page open, so it was just replaying over and over again. Sorry about that, guys. So now we've all said hi to you in 3D stereo.
It's not very often you get a chance to say hello to yourself. That's
it. Okay, I'm going to open up the Q&A portion too. So a couple people I think had some questions earlier. So, and if not, you can post those questions to us here. But first, I wanted to talk to David, a quick question to David about, for those of you who have not joined the Leaky Gut Experience, or at least you haven't gone to your first lab, right? So the initial deadline was January 31st. So what happens, David, for those people who couldn't make it or have not made it to the lab?
Sure. Well, we all know that this is the starting point, and so people have probably already seen their doctor for the first of the year. So I wanted to explain to everybody at some point that we're not trying to be restricted by putting a deadline. What we'd like to be able to do is trend everybody's results together. So in order to be able to do that, we need an endpoint. And so this is the first year we'll make allowances. So anyone who has the deadline was the 31st of January. But anyone who has purchased and not gone yet, we can extend it this year, and then we'll go with the 60 days that we have set up when it's time for next year. So nobody's missed out on anything. We'll make allowances for the starting point, but all they need to do is just to reach out to me at the CEO at my med lab, and I'll get them all taken care of.
Perfect, perfect. So I think I know Stephanie's watching, and we'll get you added into the call so you can ask your questions here in a little bit. But I wanted to, there have been almost 20 people who have gone through the process, have had their consultation with Cass. Let me go back to you, David, and just ask, what's your reaction to the response to the Leaky Gut Screen experience?
Well, we've been just blown away by the response, both when we launched it and with people who, to be completely honest, it's brand new. So people who have done work with us before, who have seen other programs that they liked. So we've been really fortunate to have a really core group of people that has really been a fascinating experience. I think what most of the users probably don't know is that, especially you and I, Cheryl, we've both been through this process already, and so we're kind of the guinea pigs out in front of everybody else doing those things. And so what I think we probably talked about it before, but what I want people, especially people who are new to the process, the reason that we picked the intestinal permeability test and leaky gut to start with is, for me, it's really looking at the mechanical side of your body. We're not looking for an antigen or a protein or an organism or anything like that. The reason we see it as the starting point is you're really looking at body the machine and seeing if using the simple test. I guess I could explain the test a little bit more as well. Using two simple sugars that are not part of your daily diet. One's a large molecule and one's a small molecule sugar. The test involves, basically just giving a first of the morning urine sample and then drinking a sugar solution included in the kit, much like what pregnant women would do in looking at a glucose tolerance test, and then collecting your urine over 6 hours, and then aliquoting a test tube size amount of it, and then that's what gets shipped back to the lab. And what the
So Cass, can you? Looks like we got David on some little technical issues. Have you heard any questions from? Oops.
it's the
Sorry. Sorry,
yeah,
David.
it's the mechanical side of leaky gut.
There he is.
There he is. We lost you a little bit there at the end, David.
So, looking at the two sugars, if the large molecule sugar is in your 6-hour sample, it means that that sugar got crossed into your bloodstream through a leaky gut as opposed to otherwise. So it's looking at the mechanical process, which to me is why it's the starting point for your journey.
Right. Hey, David. Oh, there we go. We lost you froze a little bit again. So we lost some of what you said. So you might want to check your power, your bandwidth a little bit. But there you are. You're back again. So Cass, let's go back to how the test works. Have you had any questions from people who are having trouble or don't quite understand how the test works?
No, I think like David explained, it's a pretty simple test. It's based on a simple principle. So I think when we talk about it, everyone understands the basic concept behind it. Where I think people are bumping into issues is just how do I read the results? When I look at my lab results, I see lactulose % recovery, I see mannitol % recovery, and then a ratio, and what does that mean, and which part is my result, and where do I want my result to be? That's where I think people have more questions about how to read their report.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we call it the $100 test and the $1 million interpretation.
Right, because you can test everything and all you want if you don't quite understand what the results are. So I think the fact that Cass is available for that analysis is amazing. And have you had any questions, Cass, from people who once they have found a positive response to leaky gut, which means they have leaky gut, what are some of the kind of questions you get from people from then on kind of what they do next?
Right. Well, the big question for someone who has a positive leaky gut is how do I fix it? So, what's going to be involved with getting it better, healing the leaky gut? And it's not the easiest, fastest thing. I mean, leaky gut can take, a long time to develop leaky gut, and it can take a while to heal it. There's a list of nutrients that help heal leaky gut. I've posted those on our Facebook page, but I can just run through them again.
Sure.
Glutamine is really great for the gut. It's an energy source in the cells of the gut lining, so that's you just feeding that tissue so it can heal. Deglycerinated licorice is really great. Zinc carnosine is good for healing the gut lining. Probiotics, of course, essential fatty acids. Soothing herbs like marshmallow or okra or slippery elm, right? Because the gut, I mean, there's a lot of mucus in the gut. I know that's not pretty, but that is how it works. It's good for the gut. So when you're trying to heal the gut, you just want to kind of promote its natural characteristics, like mucilaginous things like okra, slippery elm, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course diet. So I'm not going to get into that. We can talk about it, but there's other things, right? It may be that there are other things going on that are causing leaky gut, that those need to be addressed. That it's not just a nutritional problem. So those are some of the main things to think about.
Well, I'm going to pop over to Facebook and see if we have any questions too. So really quickly. And so if you guys have questions, if you're watching live, please add them in the comments. And we'll ask them. I guess David, you have a personal story with leaky gut. I know you shared it in one of our video interviews. But from your standpoint, what were some of the questions you had when you first learned about it? I know you've taken a few steps, but what are some of the questions you had to go into what you did next.
Sure. I mean, I think that I haven't really had the the autoimmune issues or things like that, but what I found with the leaky gut is it's much like cholesterol. You don't look at a person and know what their cholesterol is. It's not body type. It's not anything else. Mine's probably from eating processed foods and stress. As an entrepreneur, that's stress is I think we all three understand that as well. That even stress is good in bad times and good times as well. So stress is just a part of that process. When I went to the test to begin with, some of my family members have more autoimmune issues, and that's what got me started in the journey to begin with. And what I was surprised to find was that the one I thought was the classic case ended up being negative, and mine ended up being positive. So once again, it's not back looking for organisms or proteins or thing. It's simply looking at how well your filter is working. Is your gut keeping the things inside it that it should be, and not letting them leak out and wreak havoc on your body on the other side into your bloodstream? And for me, I think I've posted the results, and we can post them again in the Facebook page. But once I came back with a positive result, I began to ask questions of my nutraceutical friends, and I used a 10-day colostrum regimen that we put together, and within 15, it took me 15 days. It took me two doses a day for 15 days, but then followed up with another test, and within 20 days there was about a 30% improvement in the process. So I honestly believe it was the foundation for my move towards better health before I turned 50. So I've credited it with things that once you can fix body the machine at the mechanical level, everything else after that works better. And
Right.
I would say Cass probably finds that in her connection with users as well.
So we have some questions. Yay, thank you, Stephanie. So first question is it possible to use something other than the sugar solution for the intestinal permeability test? She said she felt horrible after drinking the solution and pretty crappy for the rest of the day, despite eating and had an excessive thirst, right? So is there something other than that particular solution?
There are alternatives to this test. So, looking at food sensitivities can tell you if you have a leaky gut, because if you have a lot of food sensitivities, you're looking at a leaky gut, basically. So that would be an alternative for someone who's sensitive to the sugar solution. I did talk with, it might have been after my consult with Stephanie. I spoke with Genova Diagnostics about that, and they did say that there are some people that are sensitive to this solution, especially if they have lactose intolerance. So it's not all that unusual to have a little bit of symptoms. It sounds like it affected Stephanie, and it is the first time I've heard of it from our group. So I don't think it affects everybody, but it's not. There's not really a substitute with this test. The test is standardized, and it's
right, because the sugar is actually what's being measured. So by moving it to some other way, and it is the size of the molecule that makes it a diagnostic test at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's another question. So Stephanie wants to know, as part of the study, will you be collecting additional anonymous data? Example, if anyone has an AI disorder from the participants.
Right now, what we're trending is the lab results from the basic chemistry panel and the results of the leaky gut. So I don't know. There might be some user information that we're pulling it in together. We'll start with the test results that are the objective part, and then as we learn more about the group and the group dynamics, we may end up asking more anonymous. Everything is anonymous, so it's a private group to begin with. Nothing's being published. What we're trying to do is, is help and learn from each other.
Fantastic. So, okay, we have one more question from Stephanie. Stephanie is like, you gave me the opportunity. I'm going to ask the question.
Great, Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. So leaky gut determination via lab results are often inaccurate and misinterpreted. Would you be using this study to develop a more reliable way to test for leaky gut and use the findings to help repair the gut? That's kind of a couple of questions, but
well,
yeah.
Here's what I would say is that we're trying to learn about, one, we're trying to swim as far upstream as we possibly can to figure out what could be causing GI issues, what could be causing autoimmune, causing those types of things. And so, I think that instead of relying purely on a test for leaky gut, there is the potential of having the conversation that talks about symptoms that are in common across. It's one of the huge benefits of having someone like Cass, who, I always talk about being a party of one, and N equals 1 from the science when I'm looking at my own stuff. But the ability to really learn from the group is having someone like Cass who has had the background and seeing multiple people to be able to look for patterns. I think that's the key. Cass, you can address that as well.
Well, I think the connection between autoimmune disease and leaky gut is if we saw that there was a pattern, that would be pretty validating. Even though it's really already known out there, it would just be nice to have further data from this group to confirm that that's true. I mean, I'm always curious in what types of conditions we see along with leaky gut. But I mean, I think David has that vision of how we're going to work with this data. And again, it's all anonymous and protected, and so there's not any risk about privacy. Yeah, as far as I think Stephanie asked something about would there be a way to improve the test or improve the treatments. I don't think we're really looking for a way to try to improve treatments with this information at this time.
Well, and I think that the improvement of the treatment is about you personally. So we're not necessarily looking for a blanket, although one of the things that is such a huge benefit of having a group and having a crowd is that one, you can set expectations that says, well, I started that way, but it only lasted a few days and then it was over, or I did this or I did that. That's the opportunity for the entire group to have an experience and to be able to share it. So even though the experience is very personal, from what your results can help others learn as well. And I think that in many cases, I do hear from clinicians every now and then that say, well, if you have autoimmune, I assume you have leaky gut because that's what's causing it, and that's how I start to treat you. What I think we've already learned from even this small group is that that's not always the case. And people with autoimmune issues sometimes don't show the permeability that you would think they would. It was the story of my own family. Is the person that I picked because of thyroid issues and some other things would have been a classic case for leaky gut ended up being in the normal range. So I think that part of it is trying to learn and find those patterns and use the test as a tool. It's much like a food sensitivity. There's always controversy about these types of tests, and I think the answer is that you use them as a guide. You never use them as a Bible. What you're trying to do at some point is gather another piece of information to build a clearer picture of you, and not simply only looking at one test, and if it says one thing that's the definitive answer. What you're trying to do is bring all those pieces together for a bigger picture.
Wonderful.
Just to reiterate David's point, the fact that you see results you don't expect on people is the reason to test. And that's why doctors test as part of their normal routine care of patients. Is you really need to look inside the person to see what's happening. Just the clinical, just symptoms doesn't tell you enough. So And you know, sometimes you expect someone to have leaky gut and they don't, and vice versa, and that's why it is important to test.
Well, and I think the thing that I found even in my own life is if you have leaky gut, you've just found your starting point, right? You can, I know we've seen that in the 20 people that have gone through it already, is that the ones that came back as a normal gut, we helped them move on to the next a step that could begin to look for those things. But if you come back with increased intestinal permeability, in my mind, that you found your starting point. That's the thing you concentrate on most, which has been my experience, because everything else has been more productive and more valuable after that, because that's the part that I address first.
I agree.
So we have a couple more questions from Stephanie, which are great, and I think I want to go into a little bit more of what you just touched on. The people who have who tested that they don't have leaky gut. That's that's still an important step in knowing, right? So you like you said, if you go to the clinician and you tell them your symptoms and they say, oh, you have leaky gut, and then they start treating you for that, and that's really not what you
Absolutely.
What you have. That's a really important piece of knowledge for those of us, and I'm speaking for myself, who didn't test positive for it but still have symptoms that would suggest leaky gut. So that to me leads people in the right direction, instead of months and months of treatment and supplements and
doing the wrong thing. You're wasting
Right.
you're wasting valuable time to better health if you're doing that in those cases. And I think I even said that on a Facebook post, is that when I hear a clinician say, well, you have a condition that I just assume leaky gut, so I start to treat you for, it's much like saying, well, you're thirsty all the time, and people who are thirsty all the time are diabetic, so I'm just going to treat you like a diabetic without even testing your blood sugar. And to me, we have the ability to move as far up the stream as possible. That's what functional medicine does. It looks for the cause of your problem. And for 30 years of labs, what I've learned is there's no downside to a normal result. It still gives you the information that you want, and it doesn't set you on the wrong course. It just means that you're ready to move on to the next. And I think that's what Cass has found. I won't speak for her, but I mean the ability at some point on a negative result, it means that something else is causing the symptoms that you have, whether that's a food intolerance or simple things like that. So even a negative result gives you a way as a starting point to check that one off and move on to the next most likely cause.
Right. Okay, we have another question. I'm looking
at Cheryl. Can I add to that?
Sure, absolutely.
Specifically, the tests that I would be thinking about in someone who does not have leaky gut are food sensitivities and stool testing. And I have been talking when I do my consults with people, we have been talking about those two, especially if there's anything in their history that indicates, like if they've had GI symptoms for a long time, or they don't react well to dairy and gluten and they already know that, then those are reasons to go do further investigation. So it's really great if someone does not have leaky gut. That's fantastic news. It means their immune system is intact, and their barrier against the outside world is intact, and that's awesome. So you do have to go down other routes to see what's going on, what's wrong.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So, okay, here's the next question from Stephanie. So, I'm looking for a way to gauge progress in my gut. I'm not opposed to the food sensitivity testing, but it's very expensive, and right now a little bit out of her reach financially. She wants to wait until she's seen progress in healing her gut.
Did Stephanie have leaky gut or not? Can you ask her, or can she type in did she have a positive leaky gut result?
We can ask her, Stephanie. I'll go back over to the comments and see.
I mean, basically, you need to, if you have leaky gut, then you need to monitor with the leaky gut test, unless you're sensitive to that test. So, I mean, if she had a problem with the solution, then I think it's better to avoid the test and use something else. So, Food sensitivities, maybe David can talk more about this, but there are shorter panels, smaller panels that run off a blood spot, and those are a little bit more affordable. So, if she got a leaky gut finding positive now, she doesn't need to go run a food sensitivity right now. She can wait 3 to 6 months and then follow up with foods.
Yeah, I think that there also the potential of doing an elimination diet as well, without knowing specifics. Obviously, the value of food sensitivity is not just identifying the ones that you have a reaction to, but they provide you a list of ones that you are non-reactive to. And much of the theory behind that is if you only eat the ones that are non-reactive, you should be able to see an improvement because you've taken the process that was insulting you away. So I would you're the clinician, but I mean in those cases people would normally say that dairy and gluten in most cases could be removed and have make good progress without actually testing to see that. And I think that, that's free, right? Not doing something is there's no cost to. I think the value of the food allergy test, when appropriate, can narrow that down. What I've seen in the case, especially in our own inner circle group here, is that when somebody, I don't use a food allergy test as a Bible either. What I never want to see people do is to start eating only 2 foods, shrink their diet down to 2 foods, and then because what we've seen is eventually your body builds a reaction to those 2 foods, and then where do you go from there? So I think that my suggestion to Stephanie would be try an elimination diet of the ones that are going to be the most common problems, and see if your health and how you feel doesn't get better.
That's a great suggestion, David. I'm glad you brought it up. A comprehensive elimination diet is the cheapest thing you can do. It's hard, but it is very affordable, and really it's really considered the gold standard. Food sensitivity testing is not as good as just taking the food out of your diet for a month or more and then reintroducing it to your diet and watching how your body responds to it.
Do you have? I know the list typically. I know there is because you've told it to me before. There's probably 4 or 5 big insulters. I mean that might help Stephanie as well as obviously gluten and dairy. I mean those 2 on top.
Right. Gluten, dairy, corn, soy,
eggs, right, or eggs?
Eggs, thank you. Citrus. Sometimes people have sensitive, some people just also come off of peanuts just to be safe. So that's kind of a short list. There are comprehensive elimination diets out there it's a more comprehensive plan. But a lot of clinicians kind of do a short list like what David's talking about. Just come off of the top offenders. And just dairy and gluten, like you said, I mean, probably 50% of people feel better when they...
Yes, and you can feel better within a matter of days. I mean, right, a week's time of, if dairy is what's driving your poor health or feeling bad, in a week's time without dairy, you could see a noticeable difference, for free. No tests, just, learning that from yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I think we have one more question. Okay. So Stephanie, okay, so she's been dealing with this for about a year, for over a year, she says, and she's done autoimmune testing or autoimmune protocol to heal the gut, and she takes the recommended supplements. And her follow-up question to that was short of drinking the horrible sugar solution, it's been difficult for her to gauge how her gut repair is going without some sort of reliable, reproducible test.
Right, and she's sensitive to the lactulose solution, so she's not sure that's the right one for her.
Right.
Yeah.
She does say that she did an elimination diet for 7 months. She removed gluten, soy, dairy, corn, nuts, eggs, nightshades, and seeds.
Great.
All right.
But still have a problem after she did all that. Is that what I'm to take from that, or?
It's not your standard participant. No, you're the perfect participant. She says, I guess I'm not your standard participant. I've done everything you're suggesting except for the food sensitivity test.
Well, I mean, really, it is the kind of thing, Stephanie, where we want to go into more depth about your case and your history and all the details so that we can really try to problem solve. But it does sound like you've done a lot of work, and that's awesome. And that does give you information about how to go forward. So I think, again, now food sensitivity, again, I mean, it can be a key to a case because sometimes people have weird sensitivities that you don't expect, like to rice, or to just foods that you would never pick off of a list typically. So chicken, beef, and then stool testing is important too in case there's a parasite or bacteria or fungus or something else at play interfering with gut function. So now, I think Stephanie and I, we could talk further about her case because there may be more to it. I mean, it's not just limited to these things. I mean, sometimes people have hormonal imbalances. Sometimes there's toxicity. There's different things that can interfere with the body's function.
Yeah. Well, for example, I did the food sensitivity testing, and for a long time, I always thought I'm doing the healthy thing by substituting beef with turkey, and we're eating more chicken than we are meat and red meat products, and voila, those things turned out to be inflammation indicators for me. So the thing that I thought, and I was eating them almost daily, right? We had some form of turkey burger, turkey taco. I mean, we were substituting turkey for everything, and and it was like it wasn't quite in the red zone, but it was really high in the sensitivity area. And here I was, thinking I was doing the healthy thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And walnuts, same thing. Walnuts, everybody says these are the healthy thing, good for your brain. Not for me. So I think knowing, that goes back to your personal numbers, what happens for you personally. Because I never would have guessed that something that everybody says was healthy for everybody else, salmon was another thing for me.
Right.
Everybody can have salmon and it's healthy. Not so much me when I'm in that inflammatory zone.
Right.
Yeah.
And part of the story that comes from the food sensitivity is the fact that there's 10,000 foods plus all the additives that go in it. So you're never going to test for every possible food and problem out there, and it's probably more of a reason for the elimination diet to try to find the things that you can maybe a food diary that says here's what I ate, and then when you get the whether it's joint pain or what it is that's driving a major symptom, to start to look and see I had joint pain, what have I eaten in the last 72 hours that could have possibly driven that, and see if you can find a pattern yourself. I'm a science guy. I'm always looking for a shortcut. So it's not that you can't get to the same place by elimination diet. One of the things that the food allergy panel does, at least for me, is that it gives me a list of things that I can avoid to begin with. And we can't tell you, how many times I've heard that story that said, well, I decided to eat better because of all my inflammation, and I started eating salmon and protein bars. And what happened, was the fact that those are the things that were driving the biggest inflammation. I was leaving what I thought was an unhealthy diet for a healthy diet and driving the same inflammation.
The one famous example is people who are drinking almond milk as a healthy alternative to milk, and then they might turn up to have an almond sensitivity. So they pop up everywhere. People that choose soy because it's supposedly a healthy alternative, and then they have a sensitivity to soy. And then you also have the issue of people who have a little bit of intestinal permeability will react to whatever they're eating. Put turkey in, they're going to have reactions. Put soy in, they'll have a reaction. It's just whatever is coming into the body. They'll start to
But
make.
is that because now you've driven your immune system into hyperspeed, and now a lot of things that would normally before have not caused a reaction, now it becomes sensitive to a whole host of things, not just the one that started the process to begin with?
Well, I think that you're right. I just say it a little bit differently. Is because there's leaky gut. All the foods can just get through and start to trigger the immune system. So maybe it started with just milk for that person, but it set up a bad environment in the gut, and then leaky gut set in, and now it's milk and soy and turkey and other things.
Hey, there's Andrew. Andrew's asked the question. Hey, Andrew. It says, I was fascinated by the IgG food sensitivity test. What's the basic mechanism of this test, and how do they know what they know? So he's picking your brain, lab guy. How long has this test been around, and why is this test not in the mainstream? There's a lot of questions in one, Andrew.
Cass is probably better at the IgG explanation.
I was wondering if you were going to punt to me.
Well, if I can, I will. I mean, what I can tell you is, there's always controversy about food allergies because, unlike, sometimes you can get variations from tests pretty close together. As a lab guy, what I do know is, I can draw blood out of both of your arms and end up with some variability. That's just part of, of the process. As far as, I'm going to let Cass explain the difference between IgG and IgE and what proteins are and things like that. So I am going to punt on that part of it, but,
So why do you think this test isn't the mainstream? Maybe that'll be the part that you can cover. And then.
Okay. Well, what I would give you from the answer of a standard lab like LabCorp or Quest, they are familiar with food allergies in the case of an IgE, which is what people are typically familiar with, the shellfish, peanuts, things like that, that when you consume them or around them, close your throat off and you can die from anaphylaxis. In the laboratory world, those are primarily pediatric tests because an adult does not need to have a test to know whether they have a peanut allergy because they have figured that out by the time they have been an adult. So you're dealing with mostly children in those cases of trying to identify, from an IgE. What we're doing with the layman example of the difference between IgE and IgG is that IgE causes an immediate response. You eat a peanut and your throat closes. An IgG basically causes a reaction from 24 to 72 hours, and it causes a symptom that is not easy. It doesn't immediately happen, and we don't eat one ingredient foods anymore anyway. So a simple one meal can have 100 ingredients in there, and one of those could be driving that response.
Okay, Cass, you get the how do they know what they know on this test?
Sure. So IgG, we also call them the delayed reaction. So IgE is your anaphylactic reaction to foods with the throat closing up or the hives. Everybody knows it's a peanut allergy or a strawberry allergy or something like that. And then IgG, and that stands for immunoglobulin G. So these are antibodies. The body uses a lot of different types. There's IgE, there's IgA, there's IgG, there's IgM. These are all phases of the immune system that are trying to protect you from threats, from outside dangers. And these antibodies, attack a protein. I consider it attack. Other scientists might say it's just binding to a protein. And then that helps identify that protein as a problem and, helps the body identify it and turn on other cells to attack. So it's part of your defenses. And IgG testing is not mainstream because it's not perfected yet. It's, there's a couple of things. One is that the testing is not perfect, and I think it's good for us to just admit to the reality is that the testing is still being perfected. But also, I don't think we fully understand IgG in the body either. So there's a few different subclasses. There's IgG 1, 2, 3, and 4. And all of these different subclasses have a different function in immunity.
Sorry, guys.
No problem. So, it's complicated. Your classic allergist will say there's no such thing as an IgG food reaction. So, if you're doing a test like this, just be prepared that, a typical immunologist is not going to, give it much credence. However, in the integrative and functional medicine world, people are using these tests because it helps people get better. So it's to be used as a guideline. Like David said, it's not a Bible. You don't hold to it steadfastly, but you use it as a guidepost to figure out what's going on. How is your body reacting to foods that you eat? So I think eventually, when it gets more standardized and when there's a little bit more consensus in the research, it will become mainstream. But it could be 10 years easily. So we just have to, in the meantime, people are trying to get better.
Yeah, and I would default in the view that says there's no downside to knowledge, right? We're not depending on them for everything that we do. What we're trying to do is make them a part of the picture. Mm-hmm. What we would call the science of you. It's another key piece. In the end, it's how you feel. That's what we're trying to feel better, and by finding ones that we can eliminate right off the bat, you can begin to see once they're taken out of your diet if those things don't change. If they do, you've found one of the things that are insulting your immune system and making it go haywire to begin with.
Right. I mean, the treatment for food sensitivities is harmless, right? So that's one of the benefits.
Yeah, I noticed that in Andrew's story, they took away his butter. So I think that's another a key element there as you begin to look at the things, that you follow something like bulletproof coffee, or you look at a ketogenic diet, or you look at those kinds of things as a new way, when it turns out at some point that if you have a reaction to dairy, you're trying to fix something and you're actually making the problem worse, and you think you're getting worse, but you just added to it in those cases. Mm-hmm. So I'm always for things that the solution is to stop doing something, as opposed to adding another variable in, and that's what I like about food sensitivities, is it gives you a guideline of things that if you stop, you should feel better.
Awesome. So Stephanie did comment back that she was still having leaky gut symptoms after all of that. So that might definitely mean you guys might need to have another conversation. So mm-hmm. we'll facilitate that. Maybe shoot an email to Stephanie after the call. So we have about 5 minutes left. Is there anything, Cass, from just based on your experience and the conversations? You're welcome, Andrew. Thank you so much for asking the question. Is there anything else in your experience with the process of people getting the labs, getting to finished taking the leaky gut test, having their consultation with you? Is there anything else that kind of stands out to you that might help somebody who hasn't started the process yet?
Well, one thing I talk about in my phone calls is I try to make sure people are on the Facebook page, because I do think it's a really interesting group dynamic where people are helping each other and talking and asking questions, and not everybody I've spoken with realizes they were invited to the Facebook group. So I think you told us last week, Cheryl, that would have come from your name. If you guys are looking to get into the Facebook group, you probably want to look in your email from Facebook from an email from Cheryl Lawson, an invitation from Cheryl Lawson. And that way you can join the group and just get a lot of great information. And the other things are just the the great tools on the MyMedLab site. I mean, it's easy to set up your consult yourself. Our call is recorded, so you can listen to it again. There are recommended tests that you can choose from later if they seem appropriate to you. So it's just a very user-friendly interface.
And there's also a way to reconnect with you as you progress down the process. I think that's the most important piece for me. I'm a huge believer in the crowd solves a lot of problems simply because there's 100 people looking at the process and sharing what their experiences were. And to me that I call that starting on second base. You don't have to start from scratch with that. You're in a private group that no one else can see. If you haven't been through the process, you don't get into the group. So no one's at risk of publishing information about themselves, and everyone there is all trying to improve their health, and all trying to help each other for the same goal. I think that's, I believe that's the future of a health experience, is being able to bring in people like you and learn at their pace where everyone is contributing to each other.
And we'll send out. I'm sorry. And we'll send out the link, because it's a secret group, and you have to be invited by a member of the group. You're not going to just be able to search for it and find it. But I will send out another invitation. And Andrew has one more question. So in 3 minutes. No, I'm kidding. Andrew has another question. So how can you make lab testing more popular?
Oh, good question.
You're kind of preaching to the choir here.
Well, from a guy who's been tracking and training his health and the health of my parents and my wife and my 2 children, for about 10 years, I will give a little teaser to the group. We're actually setting up a process now for me to be able to publish my own personal health record in the form of a story. And, I want everybody to stay tuned for that, because I think at some point showing the, others not only what my journey has been like, but what I learned from it, and giving them the ability to learn my story. I think it's it's instead of writing a book or doing a documentary film, I think that the future is about telling a story and letting people learn about you from a story and figure out how they can do the same thing for themselves. So, I think that, we're not here just to sell lab tests. We're looking for outcomes, and we're trying to find the best test or the best expert or the best information for you to be able to get to the best outcome the quickest. That's what science is all about.
I would say, even just from my personal experience, Andrew, I met David online after talking about digital marketing, and I was introduced to MyMedLab and went to the lab, and I was immediately hooked. Right? I was immediately hooked on the data that I was now able to have access to, and the trend, and I've gotten my family involved. So I would say, to make it more popular, tell your friends, get your family members involved in starting to track their data. I can attest to having several family conversations about about our numbers, right? At Christmas and Thanksgiving holiday, we're now talking about our genetics or our lab results. So get people that you love and you care about involved in doing the same thing, and I think that's really the best way to spread it personally, and then it'll just get better as people start to see their own results.
Well, I would say at some point, when I look at what I've tried to accomplish I'm an outcomes and a science guy, so I've always been, everyone is a self-interest of their own body to have a better life with better health. When I started building MyMedLab, I began to do that for my parents, and one of the stories that I always tell is that for my parents, everyone has a different interest in the process, and so for my parents, I'm not trying to radically change how they live. My parents are almost 80, and I believe that you reach 80 years, you should do whatever you want. That you shouldn't make radical changes. But what I am able to do with testing and knowledge like that is what my dad would call finishing strong, which is trying to make the best, most comfortable things of the years that they have left. But from a standpoint for me, it's also an opportunity to build a health record for my genetics, because with my mom and dad together, it gives me it will allow the information that I learn about them to live on beyond them. For me, I'm trying to use that science to undo what I've done to myself in nearly 50 years, with being overweight or being too sedentary or having a desk job, trying to make money with my brain instead of hard working for a living. But the real value that I'm able to draw is to take the generation of my parents and what I can learn from them, my information, and apply that information to my 2 college-age kids, and give them an ability to not dig themselves the hole that I did in middle age. And that to me is the most. We all talk about a sandwich generation where we're taking care of our parents and our kids at the same time. Nothing is more important in that conversation than health. And anyone who has any experience in healthcare understands very quickly that if you're not informed about it, you become at the mercy of how good your provider is. Your outcomes are determined by how good your doctor is. What we want to be able to do is empower the user to have their own voice and to seek out treatment that is going to benefit them because they're informed, not simply waiting on someone else to tell you how it is.
Yeah, to that point too, I mean, there's a paradigm shift happening, because I think historically we have put our faith in our doctors, and they would order the tests. There's no doubt doctors know full well how important diagnostic testing is. So that's a fact. So mostly I think it has to do with the change now where people are getting more in the driver's seat with their own health. And so it's an educational thing where each person, like through talking and through these things that David and Cheryl have said, we need to raise the bar for everyone to realize that this is important for our own health, and we need this information. And it's not just in doctors' hands. I mean, it's available to all of us now through companies like My Med Lab. So it's amazing, really.
Well, the good news is that you can get involved. The information about your health is at your fingertips is amazing. It boggles me every day that what we can learn about ourselves today. The truth is, healthcare is not getting any better if you don't get involved. And I think that would be my advice to everyone is learn the basic pieces about you. It's I'm amazed how many people don't know their blood type. Right? I mean, those are basic pieces of information that you need to know about yourself, so that you can be in charge and you can find people that will help you and hide it from everybody else.
Right. Yeah. Okay, and on that note, I think we have gotten to the end of this hangout. Thank you both for just the great knowledge, and sorry for my hounds being hounds.
Well, I'll just reiterate to anybody in the group, I want everybody to consider me their personal health concierge in this group. So my email at ceo@mymedlab.com. You can always reach me. I put a priority on this group to make sure that we can get you taken care of, because you've taken the step to help us reach our goals, and we want to do the same thing for you.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.